The neon lights of the stellar abyss cast an eerie purple glow across Zixatal's weathered exoskeleton as he nursed his fourth glass of Centaurian whiskey. His remaining antenna twitched irritably at the boisterous laughter emanating from the corner booth where a group of fresh-faced military commanders were hunched over their tactical displays. "The humans won't know what hit them," one of them declared, mandibles clicking with excitement. "Their system's defenses are primitive compared to our quantum shields." Zixatal's grip tightened around his glass, the crystalline material creaking under the pressure. These young fools, they reminded him of himself 30 cycles ago before. He absently ran a claw over the scarred chitin where his left antenna used to be. The memory of plasma fire and emergency klaxons flooded back, accompanied by the phantom pain that still haunted him during the long cold nights. The humans had taken more than just his antenna that day. They'd taken his certainty, his arrogance, and replaced it with something far more valuable: respect. The galactic hegemony was getting restless again. After 2 centuries of relative peace following the last border war, the younger generation of military leaders had grown bold. They saw the human territories as a chance to prove themselves, to carve their names into the annals of history. They hadn't been there during the border wars. They hadn't seen what Zixatal had seen. "Their projectile weapons are practically ancient," another commander scoffed, her bioluminescent patches flashing with derision. "They still use chemical propulsion for their fighters." Zixatal knocked back the remainder of his whiskey, the burn doing nothing to quell the growing unease in his thorax. The political climate had been shifting for months now. The hegemony's expansion had stalled, resources were becoming scarce in the outer rings, and the public was growing restless. A quick, decisive victory over a primitive species would be just what the Council needed to maintain their grip on power. But there was nothing quick or decisive about humans. He could still remember the first time he'd seen them in action. His fleet had thought they'd caught a human colony ship unaware. It should have been an easy capture, minimal weapons, outdated shields, a slow-moving target. Instead, the colony ship had transformed before their eyes, armor plates sliding away to reveal dozens of weapon ports. The civilians had turned out to be special forces in disguise, and what should have been a simple smash and grab turned into a bloodbath. That had been his first lesson about humans. Nothing was ever as it seemed. The commander's laughter grew louder, drawing irritated glances from the bar's other patrons. Zixatal saw one of them pull up a holographic display of Earth's solar system, gesturing at various tactical approaches with the confidence of someone who had never had their perfect plan shattered by human ingenuity. He should say something, warn them. But would they listen? The young never did. They had to learn their lessons the hard way, just as he had. Still, as he watched them plotting humanity's downfall over their drinks, he couldn't help but feel a mix of pity and dread. They had no idea what they were about to unleash. The grand chamber of the Hegemony High Command buzzed with anticipation. Hundreds of representatives from various military branches filled the amphitheater-like space, their bioluminescent markings creating a mesmerizing display of moving light in the darkened room. At the center, Supreme Commander Vexathor stood before the holographic display of human space, his iridescent scales gleaming under the artificial light. "The time has come," he announced, voice resonating through the chamber. "Our analysis shows the humans are vulnerable. Their fleet is scattered, their defenses stretched thin. We strike in 3 cycles. Zixatal shifted uncomfortably in his observer's seat. He hadn't planned to speak today, hadn't even planned to attend, but watching these fools march toward disaster made his chitin crawl. With a heavy sigh, he activated his hoverpad and moved toward the speaking platform. "Supreme Commander," he called out, his gruff voice cutting through the murmurs of approval, "I request permission to address the assembly." Vexathor's head tilted in surprise. "The decorated veteran Zixatal wishes to speak. Of course, the floor is yours." The hoverpad carried him to the center of the chamber. Looking around, Zixatal saw mostly young faces, their markings bright and unscarred. None of them had seen real combat against humans. None of them understood. "You're all going to die," he stated bluntly, causing a ripple of shocked clicks and whistles through the audience. "And worse, you're going to drag half our fleet down with you." "That's quite an accusation," General Kixal interrupted, her neural plumes bristling. "We have run thousands of simulations." Simulations, Zixatal laughed, the sound harsh and bitter. Did your simulations account for the time humans converted an entire moon into a missile? Or when they turned their cargo ships into artificial black holes, did they factor in the human tendency to do the completely insane just because someone said it was impossible? He gestured to his missing antenna. I lost this in the border wars. Know how? A human soldier threw a container of cleaning fluid at my ship's sensor array. Cleaning fluid. Who goes into battle with cleaning fluid? Humans do, because they knew our sensors would interpret it as harmless. By the time we realized the fluid was eating through our hull, it was too late. That was 30 cycles ago, Supreme Commander Vexathor said smoothly. Our technology has advanced considerably since then. So has theirs, Zixatal slammed his claw on the podium. But that's not even the point. You're all focusing on their technology, their weapons, their ships. Those aren't what make humans dangerous. It's their minds, their creativity, their absolute refusal to accept defeat. He pulled up his own holographic display showing footage from various battles he'd fought. Look here. See how they turned their damaged ships into impromptu mines. Or here, where they used our own targeting systems against us by reflecting our beam weapons with pieces of debris. Every time you think you have them cornered, they rewrite the rules of engagement. The chamber had grown quiet, but Zixatal could sense the skepticism radiating from the younger officers. They were too convinced of their own superiority, too certain that their advanced technology would guarantee victory. You're letting your past trauma cloud your judgment, Veteran Zixatal, General Kixal said, her tone dripping with condescension. Our current fleet is 10 times the size of what we had during the border wars. Our weapons are capable of destroying entire solar systems. The humans are brave, yes, but they are still a young species playing with technologies they barely understand. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the chamber. Zixatal looked around at the eager faces, the confident postures, and felt a deep weariness settle into his bones. History was about to repeat itself, and there was nothing he could do to stop it. Very well, he said quietly. But remember this moment. Remember that you were warned, because when everything goes wrong, and it will go wrong, you'll understand why the border wars ended with a treaty instead of a victory parade. He turned his hoverpad around and headed for the exit, leaving behind a wake of dismissive chitters and nervous whispers. As the chamber doors closed behind him, he heard Supreme Commander Vexathor resume his invasion briefing as if the interruption had never happened. They would learn, Zixatal thought grimly, just as he had learned all those cycles ago, and the lesson would be written in fire and blood. The hegemony invasion fleet emerged from quantum space in perfect formation, 10,000 ships strong. Their hulls gleamed with the latest metamaterial camouflage, quantum shields humming with enough power to shrug off a supernova. Supreme Commander Vexathor stood on the bridge of his flagship, the inevitable Victory, admiring the holographic display of their approach vector. Status report, he commanded, neural plumes rippling with anticipation. No signs of detection, Supreme Commander, the sensor officer reported. Human defense networks appear dormant. Their orbital platforms are maintaining standard patrol patterns. Just as predicted, General Kixal purred from her position beside him. Their primitive sensors can't penetrate our stealth systems. The fleet moved deeper into the solar system, passing the gas giants without incident. Everything was proceeding according to plan. Their simulations showed the humans would have perhaps 30 seconds of warning before the attack began, hardly enough time to mount an effective defense. Launch the first wave, Vexathor ordered. Target their defensive installations and communication arrays. I want their command and control structure decapitated in the first strike. 5,000 ships accelerated toward Earth, their weapon systems charging. The bridge crew worked with practiced efficiency, their movements confident and precise. This would be a textbook victory, one for the historical archives. The first sign that something was wrong came from the debris field near Mars. Supreme Commander, the sensor officer's voice cracked with alarm. Multiple heat signatures emerging from the debris. They're disguised as rocks. Before Vexathor could respond, hundreds of human vessels burst from their hiding places within the asteroid field. But instead of fleeing from the superior hegemony force, they charged straight toward them. Impossible, Kixal whispered. Our scans showed no power signatures, no life signs. They're using primitive nuclear reactors, the engineering officer exclaimed. Shielded with simple lead. We were looking for quantum signatures, for advanced power sources. The human ships opened fire, but not with the expected energy weapons or missile salvos. Instead, they launched what appeared to be massive nets made of crude metal cables. "Report," Vexthor demanded as the first wave of his fleet began taking evasive action. "The nets are conducting electricity, sir. They're creating massive electromagnetic pulses on contact. Our quantum shields aren't calibrated for such primitive." Dozens of hegemony ships suddenly went dark, their advanced systems overwhelmed by the brutally simple attack. The disabled vessels drifted helplessly, their crews trapped inside by their own automated safety protocols. But that was just the beginning. From Earth's direction, a massive wave of small objects appeared on their sensors. At first they seemed to be missiles, but the trajectory was wrong. They weren't aimed at the ships themselves, but at the space around them. "Analysis," Vexthor roared. "They're containers, sir, filled with some kind of powder. Wait, it's creating a cloud of reflective particles. Our targeting systems can't—" The space between Earth and Mars became a glittering fog of metallic dust. Every laser blast from the hegemony ships was suddenly reflected, split, and scattered in countless directions. Some struck their own vessels, others created chain reactions through the cloud. The carefully coordinated attack dissolved into chaos. "Fall back," Kixal ordered. "Regroup beyond the dust cloud and—" Her words were cut off by a new alarm. The disabled human ships they'd passed earlier were moving again, but now they were broadcasting energy signatures orders of magnitude higher than before. "They're overloading their reactors," the sensor officer screamed. "All of them. The radiation burst will—" The first explosion created a chain reaction. Hundreds of human ships detonated in sequence, creating a massive wave of radiation and electromagnetic energy that washed over the hegemony fleet. More ships went dark, their quantum shields useless against the primitive fury of nuclear fire. "How many ships have we lost contact with?" Vexthor demanded, his composure finally cracking. 3,000, sir. No, 4,000. They keep dropping off the network." From Earth, a new wave of ships emerged. These moved with purpose, targeting the disabled hegemony vessels with precision strikes. They weren't trying to destroy them, they were boarding them. "Supreme Commander," the communication officer's voice shook. "We're receiving transmissions from the captured ships. The humans, they're using our own vessel's quantum communications to broadcast directly into our secure network. The holographic display suddenly filled with images of human soldiers systematically taking control of hegemony ships, their crude but effective tactics overwhelming the unprepared crews. Along with the video came a simple text message. "Thanks for the new ships. Would you like to discuss surrender terms, or should we continue this demonstration?" Vexthor stared at the devastation before him, his mind struggling to process how completely their perfect plan had unraveled. In less than an hour, the humans had negated every technological advantage, turned their own ships against them, and done it all with technology that their simulations had dismissed as primitive and obsolete. "Signal the retreat," he whispered, his neural plumes flat against his skull. "Get us out of here before—" Another alarm blared. The quantum dust cloud was moving, herding their remaining ships into a kill zone. The second wave of human attacks was about to begin, and Vexthor suddenly understood with perfect clarity what Zixatal had tried to warn them about. This wasn't a battle, it was a lesson, and they were learning it the hard way. The retreat was anything but orderly. Supreme Commander Vexthor watched in horror as his once proud fleet scattered like startled prey, their formation completely broken. The quantum dust cloud had transformed the battlefield into a maze of blind spots and false readings, turning their advanced sensors into worse than useless decorations. "We need to regroup beyond the orbit of Mars," Kixal shouted over the chaos of the bridge. "If we can just reach clear space, we can make the quantum jump home." But the humans had other plans. From the captured hegemony vessels came waves of modified escape pods, each one retrofitted with crude but powerful thrusters. The pods weren't trying to flee, they were ramming straight into the quantum drive sections of the retreating ships. "How are they targeting our drive systems through the interference?" Vexthor demanded. "They're not using sensors at all, sir," the tactical officer replied, mandibles clicking in disbelief. "They're aiming by sight, pure visual targeting." The implications were staggering. The hegemony had become so dependent on their advanced targeting systems that they'd forgotten the basics of space combat. The humans, with their primitive approach, were running circles around them. A new signal cut through their command frequency. "This is Admiral Chen of the Earth Defense Force. Your ships are trapped in a tactical grid of our design. Surrender now, and we'll guarantee the safety of your crews." Vexthor was about to respond when something massive appeared on their view screens. The debris field they'd dismissed as space junk was moving, individual pieces connecting like a giant puzzle. Hidden magnetic clamps activated, revealing what had been disguised as scattered wreckage to be a massive orbital weapon platform. "By the first egg," Kixal whispered. "They built a weapon platform in plain sight, and we thought it was garbage." The platform's main cannon began to charge, drawing power from what appeared to be thousands of simple solar panels. No quantum technology, no fancy energy matrices, just raw, brutal physics about to ruin their day. "Emergency evasive action," Vexthor ordered, but it was too late. The blast caught 30 ships in its path, not destroying them, but overloading their systems with concentrated electromagnetic energy. As those ships drifted powerless, small human vessels emerged from hidden docking bays within the weapon platform itself, swarming toward their disabled prey. "Sir, we're losing contact with more ships," the communication officer reported, his voice cracking. "The humans are doing something to our quantum communication network. Each captured ship is becoming a dead zone in our grid." The tactical display told the story. The humans had turned their fleet's greatest strength, its interconnected quantum network, into a weakness. Each captured ship created a blind spot, and those blind spots were spreading like a virus through their formation. A series of explosions lit up space behind them. The remaining ships of the first wave, trapped by the quantum dust cloud, were being systematically picked apart by human boarding parties. The screams and desperate transmissions from their crews filled the command channel before cutting off one by one. "They're not just fighting us," Vexthor realized, his neural plumes flat with horror. "They're studying us, learning our protocols. Each captured ship is giving them more intelligence about our capabilities." As if to confirm his fears, several hegemony vessels suddenly turned their weapons on their former allies. The humans had already figured out how to operate their basic systems. The captured ships opened fire with perfect precision, their human crews having none of the cultural aversion to targeting sensitive areas that hegemony tactics considered taboo. "Status report," Kixal demanded. "We've lost contact with 60% of the fleet," the tactical officer responded. "Of the remaining ships, only 30% have fully functional quantum drives. The humans are specifically targeting our retreat capabilities. They're herding us." The last word hung in the air like a death sentence. They weren't facing a primitive species fighting for survival. This was a precision military operation, planned well in advance, using their own arrogance against them. Another transmission cut through their chaos, this one broadcast on all frequencies. It was a video feed from one of their captured ships. A human soldier stood on the bridge, wearing what looked like painfully obsolete powered armor. Behind them, the hegemony crew sat quietly, apparently unharmed. "Your invasion plan had one fundamental flaw," the human said, their crude translator rendering their words into passable hegemony standard. "You assumed that because we don't flaunt our military technology, we don't have any. That was a mistake. Your veteran tried to warn you. Now, let's discuss the terms of your surrender before we have to demonstrate our actual weapons." The remnants of the hegemony fleet limped toward the quantum jump point, their once pristine ships scarred and struggling. Behind them, the human fleet advanced with mechanical precision, maintaining exactly the maximum range of their primitive weapons. They weren't just pursuing, they were playing with their prey. "They're broadcasting again," the communication officer announced, his voice trembling. "All frequencies, all channels." The bridge speakers crackled to life with a sound that made Vexthor's spine plates rattle. Human laughter, just laughter, echoing through every ship in the fleet. It was followed by the battle recordings from their first engagement, showing hegemony ships being systematically dismantled by supposedly inferior forces. "Psychological warfare," Kixal growled, her earlier confidence shattered. "They're demonstrating their dominance." A new wave of human ships appeared ahead of the fleeing fleet, emerging from what looked like modified cargo containers. They had been waiting in ambush, disguised as routine commercial traffic that the hegemony's sensors had dismissed as irrelevant. "Multiple contacts," the sensor officer shouted. "They're launching. Are those mining drones?" Hundreds of small, crude-looking machines swarmed toward the hegemony ships. Instead of their usual mining lasers, They had been equipped with magnetic grapples and crude plasma cutters. What they lacked in sophistication, they made up for in sheer numbers. "Incoming transmission," the communication officer reported. "Text only." The message appeared on the main screen. "Fun fact, did you know your quantum shields have a refresh rate of 0.03 seconds? Our mining drones are really good at timing things. Watch this." The drones synchronized their attacks, their simple weapons firing in precisely timed bursts. Each shot slipped through the millisecond gap in the hegemony shields, causing minimal but accumulating damage. It was like being eaten alive by insects. "Hard to starboard," Vexathor ordered. "Get us out of their range." But the maneuver only drove them into another trap. The human fleet had split into 3 groups, each one herding separate portions of the hegemony forces in different directions. They were being divided, isolated, and systematically broken down. More human ships appeared, these ones broadcasting familiar hegemony identification codes. They had already learned to clone their transponder signals from the captured vessels. The tactical display became a confusion of friend and foe markers, making coordinated defense impossible. "They're in our command network," the tactical officer screamed. "The captured ships, they're using them to inject false data into our battlefield coordination systems." Chaos erupted as automated targeting systems began registering friendly ships as hostiles. The hegemony fleet, trained to rely on their advanced technology, found themselves unable to trust their own instruments. Ships started firing on their allies, unable to distinguish friend from foe. The humans pressed their advantage, launching what appeared to be simple kinetic projectiles. But as the slugs approached their targets, they split apart into clouds of self-guided penetrators, each one seeking out the weakened sections of hegemony ships identified by the earlier drone attacks. "Status of the quantum drive," Vexathor demanded. 20 minutes to minimum safe jump distance," the navigation officer replied. "But sir, the humans are transmitting the coordinates of our quantum emergence point. They know where we're going." The implications hit Vexathor like a physical blow. This wasn't just a defense of their system. The humans were planning to follow them home. They had turned what should have been a simple invasion into an opportunity to launch their own counter-offensive. Another message flashed across their screens. "Your quantum drive frequencies are interesting. Mind if we borrow those too? Don't worry, we'll put them to good use when we visit your colonies." The human ships began launching what looked like primitive nuclear missiles, but instead of detonating, they created localized fields of quantum interference, disrupting the very space-time the hegemony ships needed for their escape. "They're not trying to destroy us," Kixal realized, her voice hollow. "They're capturing us, studying us. Everything about this attack has been a data-gathering exercise." The human laughter continued to echo through their ships, mixed now with recordings of their own panicked transmissions. They had come to teach the humans a lesson in warfare, only to become an object lesson themselves. The stellar abyss was quieter now. The usual bustling crowd of merchants and travelers had thinned to a handful of subdued patrons, all of them watching the news broadcast displaying the hegemony's humiliating defeat. Supreme Commander Vexathor and General Kixal found Zixatal exactly where they'd left him, still nursing his Centaurian whiskey. "Veteran Zixatal," Vexathor's voice cracked, his once proud neural plumes now drooping with defeat. "We require your counsel." Zixatal didn't turn around. "Counsel? Now you want counsel? After losing half our fleet and giving the humans access to our quantum drive technology?" We didn't understand," Kixal whispered, her bioluminescent patches dim with shame. "Everything we thought we knew about them was wrong." "No," Zixatal finally turned to face them, his scarred face reflected in the bar's polished surface. "Everything you assumed about them was wrong. There's a difference. You didn't want to understand them. Your pride wouldn't allow it." The news broadcast switched to footage of human engineers efficiently dismantling captured hegemony vessels, methodically cataloguing every piece of technology. They worked with a precision that spoke of long preparation and deep understanding of their targets. "They were ready for us," Vexathor said, slumping onto a nearby stool. "Every countermeasure, every tactic, they had been preparing for years." "Of course they were ready," Zixatal gestured to the broadcast with his drink. "Did you think they spent the last 30 cycles standing still? While you were busy developing bigger quantum drives and fancier shields, they were studying us, learning our weaknesses, testing our responses with small border incidents." Kixal's mandibles clicked nervously. The council is in chaos. The humans are demanding reparations, technology exchanges, and open borders. They're even insisting on sending military advisors to our core worlds. They're not advisors, Zixatal laughed bitterly. They're insurance, making sure you don't try anything stupid again. Tell me, how many of our tactical databases did they access through the captured ships? All of them, Vexathor admitted, his color fading further. The quantum network, once they breached one ship, they had access to everything. Battle plans, colony locations, fleet movements. They know more about our military capabilities than most of our own commanders. Zixatal finished his drink, letting the silence stretch uncomfortably. Around them, the news continued to show human efficiency at work, methodically dismantling the hegemony's aura of invincibility piece by piece. "So what do you need from me?" he finally asked. "Tactical advice? Military insights? It's a bit late for that, isn't it?" "We need you to negotiate with them," Kixal said quickly. "They respect veterans of the border wars. Maybe you can help minimize the damage to our sovereignty." Zixatal's remaining antenna twitched with dark amusement. "Sovereignty? You still don't understand. They don't want our territory. They don't even want revenge. What they want is to make sure we never threaten them again, and thanks to your brilliant invasion plan, they now have everything they need to enforce that desire." He stood up slowly, looking down at his former commanders. "The humans have a saying, pride goes before a fall. Remember that the next time you think about dismissing someone's experience because it doesn't fit your preconceptions. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a meeting to attend." "A meeting?" Vexathor asked. "With whom?" "The human diplomatic team," Zixatal replied, walking away. "They offered me a job as a cultural advisor. Apparently, they value experience over pride." One standard cycle later, the Grand Chamber of the Hegemony High Command looked very different. Human advisors stood at strategic points around the room, their seemingly primitive battle armor concealing sophisticated monitoring equipment. The once proud military leadership sat subdued, watching as their new reality unfolded before them. Zixatal stood at the podium, his scarred carapace now adorned with both hegemony and human diplomatic insignia. Behind him, a holographic display showed the ongoing dismantling of the hegemony's most advanced military installations, not by force but by treaty obligation. "The integration of human military advisors into our command structure is proceeding as scheduled," he reported, enjoying the discomfort of his audience. "Their insights into our tactical vulnerabilities have been enlightening." In the front row, Supreme Commander Vexathor, now bearing the simplified title of Fleet Coordinator, shifted uncomfortably. The humans hadn't demanded his resignation. They'd done something far more devastating. They'd kept him in position but required him to attend weekly strategic reviews where they methodically dissected every flaw in his invasion plan. Furthermore, Zixatal continued, the human technological assessment teams have completed their analysis of our quantum drive systems. They've identified 47 critical vulnerabilities that our engineers somehow missed. The fixes they've proposed will be implemented immediately, under their supervision, of course. The chamber filled with uneasy clicks and whistles. The humans' approach to victory had been unlike anything in hegemony history. Instead of demanding territory or resources, they had insisted on integration. Their military advisors were everywhere, their engineers freely shared improvements to hegemony technology, and their diplomatic corps worked tirelessly to build cultural bridges. It was, Zixatal had to admit, a brilliantly elegant solution. Every improvement they offered, every vulnerability they fixed, every efficiency they introduced, made the hegemony more dependent on human expertise. They were binding the two civilizations together so tightly that future conflict would become unthinkable. On a related note, he added, allowing himself a small gesture of amusement, the human delegation has submitted their analysis of our military training programs. They've proposed significant revisions, starting with mandatory historical studies of their species conflicts. Attendance will be strictly enforced. General Kixal, now serving as a junior liaison to the human advisory team, actually shuddered. She'd been through their historical programs already. The humans had thousands of years of recorded warfare to draw upon, and they'd turned it all into ruthlessly effective teaching tools. Finally, Zixatal concluded, the human fleet has completed its survey of our border defense networks. They've generously offered to help us upgrade our early warning systems. They were quite insistent about this point. Everyone understood the unspoken message. The humans were making sure they could never be surprised by another invasion attempt. Their generosity was a velvet glove around an iron fist. Are there any questions? Zixatal asked, knowing there wouldn't be. The once boisterous military leadership had learned the value of listening over speaking. As the chamber began to empty, one of the human advisors approached his podium. Commander Chen, he'd learned, had been one of the architects of their invasion's defeat. Nice speech, she said, her translator rendering her words with perfect clarity. You really twisted the knife at the end there? I learned from the best, Zixatal replied. Your species has an extraordinary talent for making defeat feel like an opportunity. Chen smiled. That's because it usually is. Your people needed to learn about humans the hard way. Now they'll never forget. In a few years they might even thank us. Zixatal watched as the last of the hegemony leaders filed out, followed by their ever-present human shadows. You know, when I warned them about humans, I never imagined I'd end up helping you integrate our civilizations. That's because you understand something they didn't, Chen said, gesturing at the empty chamber. True strength isn't about having the biggest guns or the fanciest technology. It's about knowing when to listen to those who've seen what you haven't. The holographic displays showed human and hegemony ships conducting joint exercises, their crews learning to work together. It wasn't the future anyone had expected, but perhaps, Zixatal reflected, it was better than the alternative. Come on, Chen said, heading for the door. We've got a cultural exchange program to plan. I hear you've got some interesting stories about cleaning fluid that our tactical teams would love to hear. Zixatal touched his missing antenna and smiled. Sometimes the best victories were the ones that looked nothing like you'd imagined.